we're following up a bit on the subject question. And remember, I gave that very dramatic quote from Gamble: "The subject is nothing." And but again, I mean, you've had time to to get back to me. If there's more to this, you'll get it today. If there are more comments, can you differentiate subject and center of interest? I got to do something else before that. Joshua asked, "Can I define subject?" in that quote. What I described to Gamble when talking about George Watts was this picture of God reaching out and with a compass. You've probably seen it. It's rather like the Blake one. I think he's standing on the top of the world, like designing the world, designing the universe or something like that. And so it has, to a young person, particularly, it had a great deal of charm. The expression of the power of God, or or just design, ideas related to design, whatever. But so the subject, you could say, was God designing the universe. That's the subject, and that's what Gamble would have meant by it. However, the word subject there are other ways of doing that, and I mentioned them before. What subject can also be is, by the way, I'm going to read these things, and then I'm going to shut this video, so I'm not looking at it so I can see you guys better. But I got to cover this. Let's see if I have those quotes in a way that I could just separate them for you. Yeah, let's go with these, because I think I'm distracted. So what I'm saying, though, is so you could argue that mood is the subject of a picture, a dark mood. Well, you can't really, can you? So is that the motif? Is that the theme? Is that, there's all these other words. Well, and yet there's certain expectation in pictures and in arts in general that there be mood. And on some level, it doesn't mean that it has to be aggressive or this or that. It was funny that Edgar Allan Poe said the proper mood of art is melancholy. That is certainly true. If you listen to a certain amount of country music or Irish music, it feels like the proper mood of all that stuff is melancholy. As you know, drinking music or whatever, it's all this downer stuff. But I told that to one of my students once, who's a musician, and he's not happy with me. He thought I didn't get it, but I don't, I'm sure. But nevertheless, so we're talking about subject. I'm limiting it to narrative, and I think Gamble did too. This was about X. And we're talking about this player doing that, this one doing that. So if it's a pewter bowl and there are other things, New England objects in front of it, you would describe it as a New England, still life. And as I said, my attic corner, I'm painting one out interior with things like that, but the objects that are so significantly Oriental, I'm thinking about calling it something about, the mysterious Oriental something or other, you know what I mean? Well, so that's a title. Now, obviously, when you get to someone like Degas or the others more tonal related, and I'm thinking of Whistler, when he calls them nocturnes, you have to look again, even though that's a beach scene late in the evening. So that would have to be the subject, right? But it's not shall we say, the object of his painting. It used to be that the object was always the object, was literally the guy, and how you drew it, that was how you drew the subject, right? The subject, the guy standing there, became the object. So anyway, I'm trying to make it clear that all I mean by it is narrative, and every picture has something like a narrative that has representational stuff. If it's not really clear, somebody will make it up. So then the next part of this is, can you differentiate subject and center of interest? I did that. How did the Boston school painters and great painters of the past choose paintable subjects? Now, I'm going to tell you now, flat out, that what brought you to the dance is not the storyline. Now, you might have been reading a book and you had this great storyline. I'm thinking of N.C. Wyeth illustrating Treasure Island or something or other. And those pictures were just amazing pictures. They really nicely depict that sort of moment. And nobody does that, I don't think, better than N.C. Wyeth when it comes to those Robinson or Louis Stevenson books and a couple others, maybe quite a few others. But he's just really good at getting across a point of a particular moment, and he does it in a way that really fits the storyline. But I lost my point there just a second. but the choice of paintable subjects. If it makes a good grouping, why isn't it a paintable subject? I mean, you know what I mean? One of the things that, I don't care what it does, even if it's not a good grouping, even if you have people disparately spread across an entire wide scape, and you can find the music in the abstract. The music's there. It's your job to find it. But the subject doesn't mean anything. It's not a paintable subject versus a non-paintable one, in my view, unless you're talking about just viciousness, as I said, the stuff that really doesn't fit particularly well the arts. Yet that still begs another question, which is the question of the sublime. And, when you're talking about Aristotle and those guys, you're talking about sometimes dark things, hellish things, and that idea of how the sense of grandeur that even some of those dark things have. I find myself actually working on a last judgment of all the crazy things to be working on in this generation. But it just sat in my vision as a picture one day and just sat there. Like it was already pre-illustrated, having read a verse out of 2 Peter, I think, somewhere other in the scriptures. And so, I'm doing it, but every moment I'm actually having to figure out what the color scheme is and the distribution. So of the spots and the angle play and all that stuff that is the part and parcel of the success of the thing musically. And I do mean aesthetically, I do mean visually, as opposed to objectively, So I think I have my figures standing there doing pretty good stuff, but it's irrelevant to me if I can't make a beautiful set of patterns and a color scheme and see what I'm saying? Because that's my job. That's what brought me to the dance. And so I'm saying that I don't care what your subject is, and I think that's all Gamel's saying. It doesn't make any difference if you can't actually turn it into something that makes somebody want to become a painter. And it certainly isn't. You're not going to want to become a painter just because it's a naked girl. I hope not. The guys painting, the Angs painting beautiful women are succeeding at coming across to you because of form, because of line, because of the interplay of line and form. And you talk Michelangelo, you're talking that same idea massively. That's a fundamentally aesthetic problem. It's got nothing to do with who the woman is or copying exactly some person standing there with some provocative pose going on. I mean, you're not going to be even in the room, So, but the subject they're going to pick is going to be the subject that appeals to them visually. It's as simple as that. Now, when you're out there in a landscape, it's really ideal for you to figure out what area is going to dominate this picture and place it well, and then notice what everything else is doing. And you might even have to do a little scribble of a thumbnail to sort of sort out what it's doing and think it through a little bit. What it's doing, I'd say, in the linear ways and in color scheme kinds of ways and that sort of thing. But you're looking for it, intrinsically for it to have a visual unity, a beautiful visual, a set of relationships that are beautiful visually. So, but nevertheless, now let's go to the last question, and that's, I hope I can do this in a timely way. I'm in good shape, good. I often come across beautiful places or ideas. I should say, how do they pick subjects? It's been made very clear that we, in Gamel's studies with Gamel, were creating our little universe when we did still lifes. There's no question that's what we were doing. So, and he would say, in fact, that your painting is only going to be as beautiful as your setup, as your choice of things and your arrangement. And then ultimately, of course, then your cropping and all the rest of that sort of thing. But if you haven't set up beautiful stuff, you're not going to get a beautiful picture, right? So in that sense, that puts you in the category of being like sort of, quote, an imaginative picture. You're actually having to create something out of scratch. It's different from a landscape painter. You just walk around and look over there and say, wow. And some people, I have a student who's very good at it. John Peterson is extremely good at recognizing a beautiful shot. Got a tremendous sense of, the right sort of framing of that thing. He struggled a bit with really getting a powerful center and getting a point to his pictures, but that's just part of the rest of the story, So let's just finish with that last point, which is I often come across beautiful places or ideas I'd like to paint, but find myself at a loss as to how to make that into an attractive picture. Now, that brings up the question of, so you're out there on the spot, and people say, oh, well, how do I know when to move something or when not to move something and all that sort of thing? And what should I move, And I say to them, well, if you go out to a spot and it's not 99 something or other % really excellent, and you've placed it so that you have all that stuff related to the center of interest, then mostly it's already there for you. And you may have to work a picture, and you'll just see at some point, you'll see something that possibly should change and bring more unity linearly or spatially or coloristically. So, but you already should have picked something that actually, looking through your viewfinder, is compelling. You do have to learn to see through the viewfinders, not looking through them, but learn to see the play across the screen. You know what I mean? The panel, what's it called? The picture plane, and not look into these areas. Just notice it as if it were a painting already. It's a big art, a big skill in itself. That ability, that imaginative skill, you know, to be able to pre-imagine what it would look like as if it were a painting. And then, so that's that part of it. And there's a system for developing an idea into a picture. And there's an idea for a picture the same as the subject. Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that's amazing how many things come up here. But the idea for a picture, yeah. I mean, there are many people, and that goes back to this question about whether it's a paintable subject. There are many people who have ideas for pictures. There are people who have ideas for stories. They're lousy. I mean, they just it doesn't make good story stuff, good movie stuff. You've seen some of those kinds of movies that you wonder where they ever thought that was ever going to make a good movie. Now, you could argue, of course, that the guy just didn't have movie making skills or something like that, but there are some things that are more inherently interesting than others, without any question. But an idea for a picture, yeah. And so, you know, what is an idea for a picture? I don't even know if I know what that is. I just simply, you know, there are some that are in the illustrative side, and there's not a thing wrong with actually taking that approach and saying, so I'm going to do a picture about, you know, and say the subject will be Jason and the Golden Fleece. That was my assignment with Gamble, my first imaginative painting assignment. And so I was messing around with, was Jason going to be here? How big was the dragon going to be? What was media going to be doing? And all that stuff. What was the landscape, the tree line, and all those sorts of things. I began to search out how to make that into a compelling color scheme, distribution of grouping of figures, distribution of you know, play of sizes in relation, you know, just use of the page, you know, all those kinds of crazy things that we were just wandering, trying to find our way through. But yeah, so it was just an assignment, and it's no different from an illustrator. But consider yourself at that moment to be an illustrator if you're talking about those kinds of ideas. But if you're, you know, you know, in the world of ideas, I'm not even convinced that humans originate anything. I think we actually just recognize. We see something driving down the road, and you suddenly say, "Oh," you know, and it could be a light thing, or it could be a color scheme thing, or which is not unusual at all to happen, like in the evening hours, and that's your idea. It's a visual idea. So it might be a question whether you have a visual idea or whether you have a book idea. But if you have a book idea, you have to get all the way over to a visual idea. And what would that look like? So I put people through paces in terms of the composition class I teach, where I have you come up with a wordy narrative where you say what it is, give it a mood so you know where, you know, what kinds of sorts of things your colors and values might want to do, even your lines, and then do some figure grouping. Just try to make figures together tell the story. And I just simply take you one step at a time, walking you through that until you've actually mastered the elements related to line, value, and color as it pertains to that picture. Then you can do it very systematically. Josh must be asking me something else because he's done that with me before, so that particular part of it. But an idea for a picture the same as the subject, only you know. I mean, an idea for a picture doesn't have to be that, though. It could be just, you know, I just love light, and I just love the light of this person standing out in the sun there. And how would that work, you know? And so the subject is light, as Gamble would say about the Boston School. But that subject is light is an interesting question, because Gamble's saying it after having said to me the subject is nothing. Well, so it's nothing, but still fix on one. So you fix on a storytelling subject, or you fix on a narrative, or you fix on a color scheme, and you know, and you fundamentally then have to do your magic of ordering it. You know, creating a set of the dominant players, the great, you know, figuring out what the great unities are beyond that. You know, it's funny. I sound like I'm not saying anything. It's funny how that is, but subject is like that. I'll talk to you again another time. On this subject, I'm sure. There's no escaping from it, as there wasn't. This has taken 2 of these 15-minute segments to leave me maybe with as much doubt in your mind as not. But Anyway, I wish you all well in figuring all this stuff out. And believe me, the opinions I have, that I say, the experience I have is all I have to relate to. And I allow that there are guys out there in the world of illustration, and I actually recommend you go to those guys when you're trying to figure out the world of subject in that limited way that we're talking about. When it comes to picture making, though, I don't actually think that any of those guys are better than what I do. And my thinking is, that impressionist color dancing stuff, this dance music thing, I think that's the whole point of painting. And I wish you all well in getting yourself masters of the visual world in those very important ways, the play of X, the elements of the visual world, the play of those things, and not reduce everything to a person doing this, a dog, acting like that, what, but you probably won't, or you wouldn't be in our field. As I said, who brought you to the dance? Most people do remember by the end of the day, right? And it's beauty. So, thank you very much. Do like, subscribe, share, and any more comments you want to make on this subject or others, please. If you're finding this useful or even just provocative, please provoke some more. See you next time.